Hey everybody, it's Dan. Welcome back. This will be another sponsored review of a box of Frostgrave Cultists number 2, sent to us once again by North Star. Big thanks to them for sending this our way for review purposes. Frostgrave, if you're not familiar, is sort of the skirmish equivalent of Oathmark. Frostgrave also being produced by Osprey, who produced the rules for Oathmark, North Star providing the miniatures for both ranges. And this is another in their now line of sets where the number 2 set is female versions of the same subject matter. So there's already a Cultist set. So the Cultist 2 is the female version of the Cultists. And I think pretty much every kit that they've put out now, they have a number 2 set or a female version of the same topic. And I think it's just been fantastic that they've done this, not only from a modeling standpoint, to have lots and lots of options to draw on in terms of building up units and warbands, but they've done it in not only a successful, well-executed way, but a very tasteful way. Over the years, any kind of female representation in wargaming, especially fantasy wargaming, has by and large been, sexy, scantily clad women. And so to see, I think, a much more accurate and respectful representation of females in miniature wargaming is a big step in the right direction. So these sets, unlike the Oathmark sets, come with 20 miniatures. So you can see 20 multi-part plastic miniatures versus 30 that typically come in the Oathmark sets. And that's because this is a skirmish game where we're dealing with a much lower model count. And the other big difference between Oathmark and Frostgrave sets, this is something I've talked about, not at length, but several times before, which is that I think kits that are designed for mass battle games should have equipment set up in such a way that you could arm every figure the same way. And Oathmark kits do that, which is good because it's a mass battle game. However, Frostgrave, being a skirmish game, does not do that, so you couldn't necessarily arm everybody with a bow. But the game, it's not designed to do that. It's not what the kit is for. It's more meant to represent kind of like a Mordheim-style warband, and so you wouldn't be looking to equip everybody the same way. So just something to be aware of as we dive in here. You won't hear any criticisms of that because that's what the kit is supposed to do. It's supposed to be varied in terms of equipment options. So let's take a look at the back of the box here for just a second. You can see some finished models here. Once again, 20 multi-part plastic miniatures. There's kind of a breakdown of an example figure, and then a little blurb here on the left of how these figures fit into the world of Frostgrave. So another great box. I like the box design that they've done for both Oathmark and Frostgrave. As with the last kit, I've already taken the sprues out, so let me give you a quick idea of what you'll get inside the box. So again, 20 figures. There's 5 figures per sprue, which is typical of pretty much everything plastic that North Star produces in terms of infantry. So 4 sprues in this case, 5 figures apiece. They come with 25mm round bases, so 2 sprues of 10, which mirror the Oathmark set. So of course those are squares, and these are rounds because it's a skirmish game. So enough bases there to put everybody on their own 25mm round. So again, because these are all duplicate sprues, same thing, we'll isolate one here, and then we're going to take a look in depth here. And then as with my normal formula, if you're not familiar with my reviews, we'll go through each of the sprue components here. I'll give you a breakdown, some close-up shots, and then at the end we'll assemble some of these miniatures and see how they scale up to some other figures in my collection. So let's do an overview shot here. So you can see we've got 5 bodies on one side of the sprue here. Got weapons, a very large assortment of weapons toward the middle, and then tons and tons of head and accessory options on the other side of the sprue. And it's a shame I don't have an example of the Cultists 1 sprue, but I am quite familiar with it. And for those who've had experience with that sprue, I don't think there's really anything wrong with it. However, I think you'll agree, if you're familiar with that sprue, that this one is much, much larger and I think more packed full of bits. And I have a breakdown of all the bits here, which I'll provide in just a moment. But again, just from a layout standpoint, I wouldn't say this is like 50% larger than the Cultists 1 sprue. And the head options, I think it's like double, if not, once again, 50% more heads. It comes with quite a lot. So quick breakdown in terms of specs here, because it's kind of hard to gauge what you get because it's so mixed up, which is good because it's just jam-packed. But in terms of what you get per sprue, 5 bodies, as you can see, There's 21 heads, which we'll look at in detail in a moment. You've got 12 accessory options, like things that would be glued onto belts, backpack kind of options like that. You've got 2 bucklers, and then arms gets really complex here. So included in the box, and this is true of the Cultists 1 set as well, includes like some undead bits. I mentioned that right here. And in the first set they had, I think, like actual skeleton bits. Whereas with this set, I think they've gone with the artistic direction. I think the correct direction of making them more like ghouls or zombies, something like that. So there are 9 arms that will kind of accommodate that, if that's what you want to build. And again, we'll look at all this in detail in a moment. I'm just kind of briefly going over the makeup of the sprue here. There are 4 empty arms that have nothing. It's just mostly like to hold a shield or something like that. There's 2 bows, 2 crossbows, broken up kind of in the middle of the sprue there. You've got 10 hand weapons, like one-handed weapons, 1 spear, and then 3, what I'll say, like our pole arms or great weapons. So absolutely brimming with bits, but let's take a look at the bodies here. We'll look at the bodies first, then heads, and then arms, and then accessories, and then we'll put some of these together. So all the bodies are up here. You can see that they're dressed in kind of like ragged clothing and cloth. Very, very nice sculpting on these. And nice too, again, going back to my point about tasteful representation of women, that again, these are designed to be women, but they're sculpted in such a way, because they have lots of like fur and cloaks and stuff, that I would say these are actually mostly androgynous. Like you could use these as men if you wanted to. So yeah, you can see everybody's a little bit different in terms of like the cloth clothing that they've got. They've all got like furs, stuff like that, belts, like chains around this one here, which is good. And the kind of the generic nature of the art style means that I think that you could use these to represent a lot of different stuff, right? Like if you're picking these figures up, for example, to use in some kind of like post-apocalyptic game, I think these would fit right in. You just need some guns, basically. And you can see there's really nothing about these that suggests that these are medieval. However, you could also use these, I think, for like medieval wargaming. So it's very well done that way in terms of things being detailed, but I think generic. So very nicely done there. Nice assortment and variety of poses as well. I think it's excellently done. In terms of heads, let's jump down here toward the bottom, because that's where all the heads are. Again, there are 21 heads, and they're sort of categorized. Like you've got, let me flip this over here, I don't want to disorient you, but you can see here we've got 5 heads that are kind of this like classic cultist look, sort of kind of like a Warhammer Fantasy, I would say, like, not Carnival of Chaos, but you know what I'm gonna get in terms of like chaos cultists. So you've got like some hoods, things like that. Very cool designs there. You've got, if I flip it over here, you've got 6 heads here that I think are meant to be undead of some kind. Again, they actually remind me of more like ghouls, which I think is a neat direction to take these. But you can see they've got like wrappings, bandages, kind of busted up teeth and stuff like that. And again, some of them are clearly meant to be female heads and faces. Some of them, as I said, are slightly more androgynous. Like that could be a dude. But I think it's very smart of them to have gone in this direction. If I continue down the line here, you've got some more heads that, it's almost like generic horror, right? Some pretty spooky looking ones, but all of them you can see are incredibly detailed. You can make out all the hair. This one's got like its mouth stitched shut. That one looks like its face is burned by acid or something. And then same thing here. So just, yeah, very well done in terms of the detail they're providing. Look at the backs of the heads here just for a second. Let's look at weapons here too. So I mentioned bows and crossbows are in the center here. So you've got 2 bows and then 2 arms that go with the bows. 2 crossbows here. Hand weapons are scattered around a little bit. So let's look at the zombie arms here, or undead arms, I think as they're generically calling them. And you can see here they're kind of like open grasping hands. As I said, they more remind me of like ghouls. I think this would make a great set if you wanted to make some Warhammer Fantasy ghouls, because you can see the arms are all like wrapped up and ripped. Interestingly, in terms of breakdown, there are 7 left arms and 2 right arms. And what that means is that only 2 of the figures per sprue could have both hands empty like this, kind of like a lunging forward zombie kind of pose. However, I think that's okay because, as we'll see with the hand weapon options, there are plenty of hand weapons in here that I think would be perfectly acceptable for, say, a zombie or a ghoul, something like that. If that's, again, if undead is what you want to make out of this set. There you go. So you got some nice empty hands there, kind of undead arms. You have the 4 empty arms that I mentioned, the ones that have nothing on them. If you get kind of close here, so see there's nothing in their hands. They're mostly just there to either hold a shield or just be in kind of a punching, fighting pose. And the breakdown there is 3 left arms and 1 right arm, if that's something that you're after. The bows and the crossbows we talked about, and then the hand weapon breakdown in terms of weapons that have, or hands that have a weapon in them. You've got 10 of those. 3 have a weapon in the left hand, and then 7 have a weapon in the right hand. So if we kind of move around the sprue here, you can see that they are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we'll kind of work our way around here so you can see these in detail. And a really nice variety of weapons here, from like clubs to butcher's knives, traditional swords. You can see like cleavers, and all of them, or most of them, have battle damage, or like they look kind of rusted or pockmarked, which is great for the subject matter. Big machete looking thing. Going back to my point about ghouls or like undead, just this one's just holding a bone with what looks like a nail through it or something like that. So that's very cool. You've got a torch up here, left-handed torch. This sword, which is almost like a urukai blade. Very fun. And this like blacksmith's hammer, right? And then there's 1 spear, which you can see right here. Kind of a wicked-looking boar hunting spear there. And then you've got 3 great weapons, because there's a mix of polearms and large axes. So we've got this one here, this kind of glaive, which goes with this arm piece here. You got this large hammer, which goes with this arm piece. And you've got this like wood cutter's axe. So there you go. So really, I think, incredible variety of bits. As I said, if you've seen the Cultist 1 sprue set, I think that was a fine set, but I really think that this builds on that set in all the right ways. I think that this is a real step in the correct direction, both in terms of the number of bits that it includes and the direction of things like the arms. Instead of being skeleton arms, I think it makes a lot more sense for them to be like zombie or ghoul arms. So, great foundation here. I want to put one of these sprues together for us, see how the miniatures look all assembled, and then I'll see how they scale up next to some of the other models that I've got. All right, here we go. So I've built up one of the sprues here, and I think you'll agree these make for really fantastic, kind of generic cult figures. I don't know how else to say it. There's some great poses, great options in terms of the bits, lots of movement. Very nice sculpting. Everything goes together without any issue. I was doing lots of dry fitting just to see if I could find any combinations that didn't quite work, and I was not able to find any. Here's one that I've made in more like a undead style, which I think also looks great. And again, I mentioned it when we were looking at the bodies on the sprues, but I think that the design that they've made here is so good that you really could use them as, you could use them with Song of Ice and Fire range miniatures. You could use them for, as I said, like some kind of like Mad Max style post-apocalyptic kind of game. Call them scavengers, add some like just rifles. You could use them as alternate Gene Stealer cult figures. Use them in Stargrave, which is the sci-fi equivalent of Frostgrave. Anyway, so I like, again, the generic approach to this kit, so they can be used for a lot of different things, kit bash with a lot of different stuff. And to that end, it works in both directions. Not only are the bodies generic enough that it could be used in pretty much any setting you can think of, but the bits, I think, can also be used to kind of convert your existing models in your collection. That's, of course, one of the beauties of plastic figures, is kit bashing is just so easy. So here's a Perry Hagenkorp model. I just slapped some cultist bits on him, and now he's a medieval cultist. Same thing here. This is a Victrix Persian archer, of all things. And the arms, the head, the quiver, and the shield are from this kit. So yeah, if use your imagination, basically anything can become a cultist using the bits within the set. So let's pick one here. This guy's pretty much in a standing upright pose. Let's look at how they scale up. So this is a Warlord Games figure on the right. This is a Citadel Lord of the Rings figure, Gandalf. Back to my point about Middle-earth strategy battle games. I think these would be great wild men or women, as it were. Perry War of the Roses figure. Victrix Viking. So you can scale, the scale here you can see is pretty much compatible with all historical ranges. This is a War Games Atlantic Foot Knight. And then a Games Workshop Inquisitor. It's a really excellent kit. What's the verdict? I think this is fantastic. I really enjoy the proportions. I think everything's well done. The generic nature of the kit, I think, is useful for a whole host of settings. So if this is something that you're thinking about picking up, I don't think you can go wrong. Even if you don't play Frostgrave, I think this kit has a lot of utility and can be used across your existing collection. So I got a couple more reviews from North Star. Thanks again to them for sending this kit. And the ones that will be upcoming here, I'll get those reviews out for you as quickly as I can, so stay tuned for those. As ever, I appreciate you guys dropping by for this one, and until next time, happy gaming.